Rob Blake decided he's not waiting until the draft to make moves. He made a phone call, and now we have Kevin Fiala. We're going to talk about that on today's episode of Locked On Los Angeles Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everyone, happy Wednesday evening. Welcome to a special emergency edition of Locked On Los Angeles Kings because we've got breaking news. We had a nice little plan to just sort of ease into a Thursday show and just record something and, maybe talk about speculating about what the Kings could do. And Rob Blake said, nope, we're just gonna get out there and do it because the Kings acquired Kevin Fiala. Because why not? My name is Sarah Avampato, your for now host of Locked On Kings, joined by Eddie Garcia, your for the future host of Locked On Kings, as we've got a show. Rob Blake knew that we were recording a show today and was like,
he's a nice guy. He's a very nice man. We really appreciate him. He's doing a pretty good job as GM, I would say, right now as well.
Yeah.
A lot of Kings fans are very happy. Right now, we talked about it when I joined you the other day. What is the number one need? I think a lot of people thought it was get a very talented elite level left winger, and they went out and did it.
Yeah. So for anyone who is, just emerging from like their work cocoon or doesn't like check Twitter all day long like I do, the Kings acquired Kevin Fiala on Wednesday afternoon from the Minnesota Wild in exchange for their first round pick, the 19th pick in this upcoming draft, as well as the rights to defenseman Brock Faber. So Kings, we'll talk about Brock Faber in a little bit, but we know they have a logjam on D. Faber is the one that they decided to send him home. He's from Minnesota, goes to college there. So it's a good story for the Wild. And the Kings get a proven scoring winger who is immediately going to make the team better. And honestly, for not like a ton of money, Fiala's a restricted free agent. So the Kings technically just got his rights, but they are signing him to a long-term deal. So we're locking him up at a rate much lower than, had they gone after, like we talked about earlier in the week, something like Philip Forsberg, Johnny Gaudreau, who were going to cost, $9-10 million at least. This Forsberg deal is, I still want Philip Forsberg, I guess. This Fiala deal coming in a lot lower so far.
Yeah, no, I think it's a home run on a lot of levels. You're getting a guy who's about to turn 26, so he's just entering the prime of his career. As you mentioned, a proven goal scorer, a guy who's dynamic, has a lot of skill. He's a great skater. He wasn't playing on the top line in Minnesota, but he still put up 85 points, 33 goals. He played on their number one power play unit at times, and it's reportedly 7 years, $7.9 million. That's very reasonable. This was not an overpayment. It's a very fair payment. For a guy who has shown that this is the type of production he can give you year in and year out. So again, he's still young. He's entering his prime. The rate is reasonable, and he's put up the numbers. And of course, what you gave up, I think, was reasonable. We didn't overpay for him as far as giving up any of our top level prospects. We gave up a promising, potentially good young defenseman, which we have a number of in our system. So, the first round pick is gone for this coming draft, so we don't have to worry about talking about that. But I thought it was a great deal for Rob Blake across the board.
Yeah, and I think, it's a win for both teams as well. The Wild knew that they're in a cap crunch. They're very limited as to what they can do, who they can re-sign. And a couple weeks ago, I did kind of a crossover episode with Seth from Locked On Wild, who, whenever we talked about it, his kind of proposal was essentially pick young prospect, which is what the Kings did. He was looking more for someone up front. So we had discussed some of the younger centers who are in the Kings program, but this makes just as much sense. And, the Wild, all teams love the good, like boy comes home story. But I feel like the
Especially
Wild,
them, especially
yeah,
them, because of the
yeah.
state of hockey, because college hockey and high school hockey is such a huge part of the hockey culture in that state. This, I'm sure, bringing a hometown guy in
Mhm.
is going to make a lot of the folks in the state of hockey very happy.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where, whenever I started seeing, the tweets from Elliot Friedman and everything, I was like, oh, I like this. I like
Yeah.
this a lot. Like I liked it whenever Seth and I had talked about it. I think that you automatically have a first line that is very dangerous. It means you don't have to disrupt that second line. If you want to keep the Dano Moore Arvidsson line together, you can do that now. We talked the other day about pushing Alex Iafallo down the lineup to make him a more dangerous third line kind of player. And now that's where he's going to be. You're not putting, you don't get Kevin Fiala to put him on your third line,
Yeah.
and I saw the deal and I was like, I don't hate this. Faber definitely is a very promising defenseman. He was really one of the best defensemen for Team USA at the Olympics, but at the end of the day, they have so many young guys ready to come up or, on the cusp of being ready on that right side for defense that someone's expendable eventually. And it turned out to be him.
Yeah, you obviously have to give to get. I mean, the best trades in all sports are the ones that help both sides. I know
Mhm.
that people, maybe some fans are like, oh, we want to win that trade or whatever. But if this works out for both sides, then it makes it
Mhm.
attractive for the Kings and Wild to do business down the line. So I think those best trades are the ones that do help both teams. It will remain to be seen whether it helps Minnesota, but they're acquiring assets, as you said. There are cap issues there in Minnesota, so they're going to have to, let somebody go. They've already, got Kirill Kaprizov there, who's the star that they're going to build
Mhm.
around, and Kevin Fiala was a luxury that they couldn't afford. So, like I said, it's a great trade all the way around. I'm very excited that we did fill what I thought was the Kings' number one need.
Mhm.
We've already got it out of the way. There's no, Rob Blake took care of business early on. And now, like we said, if Alex Iafallo is still in the plans for the Kings, he can slide down to that third line and
Mhm.
be in a role that I think is more suited for him and be a great third line
Yeah.
winger, where he was just a little, I think, out of place on that top line.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we will talk a little bit more about Kevin Fiala, the Wild, what this means for the Kings coming up in just a second. But first, let's talk about betonline.net because BetOnline is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports information. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, news, including wrapping up this year's NHL playoffs. You can find baseball, really any sport imaginable. You can find information on betonline.net. It is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. It's really a great resource. If you go to their website, it's not just going to give you lines and props and statistics on this or that. You can also dig in and read articles about, whatever your favorite sport is or whatever thing you're thinking about making a wager on. You can get yourself informed as well about what is going on in the landscape of that sport. BetOnline.net, of course, remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and even golf. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. Go to BetOnline. It is where the game starts. So this is Locked On Kings. This is Locked On Kevin Fiala, I guess we could say, as we get ready to welcome our new winger. A look at Fiala overall, this in the regular season. No one is going to live up to Kirill Kaprizov. He has just been ridiculous for the Wild, just at the top of every scoring chart. But if you look at goals scored for the Wild, Fiala was third. He had 33 goals in 82 games. Overall points, he was second in points, 85 points in 82 games. That's pretty darn good. And I think the thing that I've seen some people kind of being like, but it's a team with Kirill Kaprizov. Kevin Fiala didn't spend that much time playing with him. And so you can't really look at this as a situation of, oh, well, he put up those numbers because he's playing next to this elite guy. He didn't spend a whole lot of time next to him. Fiala, like I feel like a lot of scoring players, he's streaky. There's definitely
He
times where
is.
he's not, and we're familiar with that. Adrian Kempe, like everyone on this team, it's just the way it is. And so I'm not really concerned about that. I know that they said once they put him with Matt Boldy towards the end of the year, that Fiala kind of just really kicked it up. And so I know one of the criticisms I've seen of him is maybe some turnovers, a little bit high risk, high reward sometimes. But if you're putting him with Anze Kopitar, which is where I feel like we just assume he's going to go, but even if not, even if you're putting him with like Phil Deneau, I don't know that I care. Like, he's going to have defensively responsible other players on his line that will hopefully make up for any kind of challenges he has there.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think your assessment of him is right on. If you're going to criticize something about him, it is that he can be a bit streaky. When he's on, he is an elite level player on par with a Kirill Kaprizov. Maybe not quite as creative, but his skills are not far off. Problem is, sometimes he does disappear a little bit. But at the end of the season, the numbers are there. So you are going to get the production. It just can sometimes you're going to have to ride the wave with him a little bit. But when he's on, he's as good as anybody. But there are some ebbs and flows to his game. You just hope that when it gets to the latter part of the season and when you get into the playoffs, that he's playing at that high level. But yes, if you're going to look at a criticism of him, he can be a bit streaky at times. It's true.
Yeah, I saw a few comments about, like he disappeared in the playoffs, that is a true statement. His stats for the playoffs, not great. Over 6 games, he just had 3 assists. But if you look at the Wild in the playoffs, basically anyone who was not named Kirill Kaprizov disappeared in the playoffs. And so, yeah, it's concerning that, you don't want that player to go cold in the playoffs. Like that's like your worst case scenario. But the whole team did. So I don't know. I can't really find it within myself to use that as something to be concerned about whenever the entire Minnesota Wild organization just forgot how to score.
Well, I think it's one of those things, like we said, if Minnesota could have advanced and he had more opportunities, eventually he would have been able to get the production. But because they only lasted a short time in the playoffs, there wasn't enough time for him to do what he could do. But eventually, I think if they were to advance on, you would see him contribute. But like I said, over a short period of games, sometimes he does get a little bit lost. Hopefully in those moments, Adrian Kempe will pick up the slack for him. But yeah, it's exciting to see what he can do on a legitimate number one line. It's exciting that the Kings have obviously filled this big need. Like I said, he can also help out on the power play as well, whether it's the first or the second unit. Just a real dynamic. You're going to love his hands. He can definitely set up other players, and he's got a good solid shot as well. So, we were talking about how going into this season was going to be so exciting. Still not knowing exactly what Rob Blake was going to be able to do. But I mean, the excitement level, I think, for Kings fans has to be just so much higher now that they've filled what I think a lot of people thought was that number one need. And now where do they go from here? Obviously, there's, got to re-sign Adrian Kempe and some decisions to be made. But as far as the big decision to me for this offseason, they made it, they filled it, and they got pretty much the perfect player.
Yeah. And, just looking at, Fiala had, scored 33 goals. Last year when Adrian Kempe scored, over 30 goals was the first time in, like, I'm going back in the stats. Like, I'm in 2018-19, like the Kings haven't had a 30 goal scorer since, the year that, Kopitar did it in 2017-18, like, and it's one guy, they don't have a very long history of having guys putting in that many goals. And when you look at Fiala, and his shooting percentage is right on with his career average. Like, last year he shot at 12.6%. His career average is 11.4. So it's not like he was going, it's not one of those seasons where suddenly a guy shoots at 20% and you're like, oh, where's this guy been? Well, he had one weird season. It seems pretty representative of who he is as a player. The past 3 years were all in that 12 to 13% range. So it seems like that is who he is. We're not getting you had one good season and we just have to hope for the best kind of situation here.
Yeah, I agree. He has shown some consistency as far as the numbers across the board, even though at times, like we said, he can be a little inconsistent from week in to week out. But again, at the end of the season, he puts up the numbers. So like I said, I just couldn't be more excited about this. And let's be honest, from a business standpoint for the Kings, offense sells. I mean, winning sells, but everybody likes to see an exciting brand of hockey. We are seeing that more and more in the NHL with goal scoring going up and so on and so forth. So this is such a win on the ice, and I even think off the ice for the Kings, a guy that fans can get excited about, to go out and want to buy those season tickets, to see this new big piece on the top line with Kopitar and Kempe. Those types of things just energizes an organization, I think, from top to bottom.
Yeah, and I haven't. I mean, there's always going to be someone who's like, "Oh, this is terrible." Like, that's just it's the way of being a sports fan. But I feel like the general reaction that I've seen online, from Kings fans, has been excitement of, we're getting a player. We know he can contribute. We know who he is. This year, the draft, like we've talked about it on the show, the draft this year is very much you have your top like 3 guys and then random. Like, there is no kind of consensus in looking at the draft, and everyone sort of agrees that next year's draft is a lot better in terms of prospects. And the Kings are at a point in their sort of rebuild that they can afford to not use a first round pick this year. It's not going to wreck anything if they don't bring home, yet another forward or yet another right defenseman that they're not going to have a room for anywhere.
Well, and let's be honest, the last few number 1 picks for the Kings, and understandably, we still have to learn about Brent Clark and things like that. But some of the number 1 picks over the past few years haven't completely panned out at this point. I'm personally always in favor of, if you can go out and get proven players, prospects and picks, I think that's the way to go. Obviously, you have to pay for them. But, when you have younger players that have rookie level contracts and things like that, that makes it easier to fill in gaps. But I think it was a very fair price to pay for a player who's proven. And as we said, depth in the organization on D. You're shipping off potentially a very good player, but you've got a lot of very good players at that same level at this point. So great job by Rob Blake. And again, we saw him go out last year and hit a couple of home runs with Philip Deneau and Victor Arvidsson. I think he's done it again so far this year. Yeah.
I feel like all the people who have found reasons to complain about Rob Blake, like, I'd like to talk with them about, I feel like this is a good move. We're seeing fans from other teams being like, wait, that was it? That was all it took? Like, we could have had Kevin Fiala for this? And I feel like whenever you're seeing that reaction, you're like, okay, like, that's something good usually happened then, when everyone else is mad that they didn't give up, the same thing to get that player. We're going to look a little bit more at the trade, what it means for the Kings, and where they go from here, coming up right after this. But of course, you are listening to Locked On Kings, and thank you for making this show your first listen of the post news cycle here, as we're throwing a show out later on the evening. The NHL draft is right around the corner. The Kings don't have a pick anymore, so it's going to be interesting for us to just sit back and relax and watch and see what everyone else does. But our team of local hosts and draft experts are going to be breaking it down on draft day with insights and analysis for every pick in the first round. So if you are a draft aficionado, if that is your jam, well, we've got you covered on the day of the draft. So make sure you're subscribing to Locked On Kings for breaking news with the Kings. Make sure you're subscribing to Locked On NHL on YouTube, where you can get all the latest breakdowns on the NHL draft and much more, as we just get ready to cycle into next season and learn about some new prospects who are going to hit the league eventually. But we don't have a draft pick, which also is very funny because, I was starting to do a bunch of work to like dig into the draft and like, all right, is there like prospects I should be looking into, or, who can connect me with this guy? That doesn't matter. Rob Blake saw that I was trying to prepare for draft week, and he said, "Yeah, don't worry about it. Got you covered."
That was nice of him. Go ahead and just relax now and just sit back and watch. And we're finally going to have in Montreal, after a few years off, right? We're going to have people in attendance. We're going to have the kids getting to go up and hold up the jersey and get the pictures taken and all those kinds of things. So we haven't had that in a while. So it's nice to get that back.
Yeah, and that we don't have to stress about it. Like we're not going to have to endure at the end of the day Kings fans being like, "How dare you pick, Bob Smith and you could have picked, Johnny Smith instead." Like, no, we got Kevin Fiala. That's fine. And yeah, I like that point about, yeah, you have to pay to get a player who is going to be able to contribute right now. But like that is the point of the rebuild that the Kings are in. We're not in a position where we need to start or keep amassing draft picks and amassing prospects and stocking the AHL or whatever. This team showed that they can get to the playoffs. They showed that they can win games in the playoffs. And now they're ready to take the next step. I'm sure they see Vegas doing Vegas things and hiring, Bruce Cassidy, who is like, I was very mad when that happened. I was like, you had to go get a good coach, didn't you? You had to do it. So I'm sure they see what's happening in the rest of the Pacific Division and they know they need to keep up. They know that Vegas isn't going to be bad every year forever, no matter how much we might like it. And the only way you're going to stay in that playoff picture is making your team better. And we love our prospects, but there was no one ready yet to step into that role that we're going to be asking Kevin Fiala to play. And it's going to give guys like Arthur Kaliev more time to kind of develop and round out before we start saying, all right, go first line, have fun. I think it keeps it so people aren't being pushed into roles that they're maybe not ready for yet, which has sort of been a problem for the Kings over the past handful of years of, well, we don't have anyone else to play there. So guess what? Now you're playing there.
Yeah. And, you look at, going forward with the Kings and we're obviously very excited about bringing in Kevin Fiala. It's, you talk about sitting back and relaxing a little bit. And, coming off last year, I think it was fair for fans to wonder, did we overachieve or are we on track where we are? And I think it would have been a mistake certainly to, kind of send the message to the team and the fan base that we're okay where we are. We're just, we'll just re-sign what we have. The younger guys can develop another year and we'll just go forward that way. But, you talk about Vegas, they had a down year. Are they going to be able to bounce back next year? The Vancouver could be improved. Calgary, we'll see what they do with the players they have to re-sign, but they might take a step back. Edmonton obviously had a big year. So the point is, I think the time now is to not kind of be happy with what we did last year, but to now take another step forward, right? Every year you want to take another step forward. And I'm so glad to see that the Kings did that. And I think this addition helps them to take another step forward. They weren't satisfied with a year last year where they maybe overachieved or they maybe are now ahead of the schedule and they thought maybe we can just kind of live on that for a while. No, it's still being aggressive. It's still going out and improving. And, hopefully the guys do take another step forward. That will obviously help things at the back end, but they needed to address the front line. They needed to address the scoring issue, and they did that. So I love seeing the aggressiveness. I love seeing the proactiveness of going out and doing things and getting better, not just saying we had a great year, we're on track, we're fine where we are. No, let's get better. Let's get better, and that's what this move sends the message, I think.
Yeah, and I think, that's what the fans have been clamoring for, and that's what guys like Drew Doughty on the team have been saying too, is, we're ready, invest in us. We want to keep taking steps forward, but, we need you, ownership, management, to trust us and to help set us up for success here. And, I like that it's an aggressive move, but it's on the right. It's not the Dean Lombardi aggressive move where you go out and sell the farm for a guy to play for one season.
Yep.
And then, he gets hurt halfway through and whatever. It's aggressive, but it's a young player who we now have locked up under control for, 7-8 years or whatever it was. It's aggressive in a smart way, which I feel like Rob Blake has been, he's had missteps. We can talk all day about Ilya Kovalchuk and how that didn't work out, but I think that he's been making some very smart moves that aren't like mortgaging the future of the team just to hopefully be a little bit better. Like, this is something that, as the team continues to grow through their rebuild, guys like Fiala, Arvidsson, Deneau are all going to be there and continuing to grow with this team too. to help get to the next step. So it shows a lot of faith in the team and where they're at and where, that they've achieved. They're ready to go to the next step, but it doesn't do it in a way that you're giving, like they didn't send away Quentin Byfield. They didn't send away Brant Clark. They made a very smart move that I can't see how this is going to, well, it's hockey. Something can always come back to bite you, but it doesn't seem like a move to be concerned about, I think.
Well, maybe this is a little bit of wishful thinking on my part, but we just saw Joe Sakic win the Stanley Cup with the Avalanche, a star player from that organization that he played at. And when he got hired, a lot of people were like, is this just bringing in a big name? Does this guy really know how to build a team? And there were growing pains. There were bumps early on, but they stuck with him. Yeah. And he ended up obviously doing a magnificent job in getting the Avs to win the Stanley Cup. I think some of the things were said about Rob Blake as well. It's a big name. He's a Hall of Famer. He played here. Oh, it's Luc Robitaille's buddy. Does this guy really know what he's doing? And, again, has he been 100% perfect? Of course not. But who is? But I like the moves he's made. I like seeing him grow into this role. I really feel confident that he can do the job based on the things he's done over the past few years. He gets the extension rewarded from the organization. And just going forward, I really feel like the Kings are in good hands with Rob Blake right now.
Yeah. And I like the fact that there has been no overreacting from him. I think that in the first couple years of his tenure, when the writing was on the wall of like this team very clearly, like you need to rebuild, you need to start getting rid of parts and bringing in prospects and bringing in picks. I feel like he got that very quickly and it made people mad. No one wants to see their favorites get traded. No one wants to see a team kind of admit, hey, yeah, we're going to be bad for a couple of seasons. But, there hasn't been this sort of like knee jerk, the Kings lost out in the first round of the playoffs and they could have overreacted in, two ways. They could have overreacted by, like you were saying, being like, we're fine with the status quo. Like, whatever. We're not going to change anything. We're not going to do anything, which I guess would be an underreaction. But they also didn't overreact in the other way, which was we have to go throw all of this money at, or, all of these prospects to get this one guy. I think everything has been very calculated and, it gives me a lot of confidence, I think, in, the direction the team is going in and the fact that we're not going to see Rob Blake make a big move like that, I think, until the team is ready. And I really am getting a sense that, his assessment of where the team is in that, that rebuild process of ready to take the next step, ready to be a legit contender, like seems like, everything he's laid out, the team has hit those benchmarks. So that's a really good sign that things are progressing, the best way they should be.
And we talk about our excitement today as fans. But I got to believe if you're a Kings player, you mentioned Drew Doughty. I got to believe if you're a Kings player right now and you see this come across on your phone, you're smiling and you're pretty excited. And this helps you to get energized and ready for the next season as well. So it's been a great day for Kings fans, for the Kings organization, and a great way to get started here and kind of grab some headlines as well as far as signing kind of that big first name of free agency.
Yeah. Those guys are going to be amped up whenever, the first day of training camp hits. I can't wait to see, they all talk about how excited they are when they see that, they're given that vote of confidence by their leadership. And this is a big one. This is a big commitment to a player that, the opportunity came along. There was the quote basically from Billy Guerin that was essentially like, I didn't really want to play teams against each other. This deal came from the Kings. I liked it. We're done. Which of course has Wild fans mad because now they're like, what do you mean you didn't play everyone against each other? We could have gotten so much more, but
that's their problem.
Right, exactly. That's their problem. Like you said, this is a deal that I think both teams are going to be happy with. And if you're happy with it, take it, because at any minute, Rob Blake could have made some other deal with someone else. And then, there goes the Wild's bargaining chip. So that's always interesting to see people get kind of mad at it from that perspective. But, I liked the fact that, he seems like a pretty straight shooter. Like, it doesn't seem like you're going to be getting jerked around if you're trying to make a deal with Rob Blake. It's like, this is what I've got. Do you want it? Yes or no?
Yeah,
And
I agree. I mean, every time I see him talk, whether it's the exit interview at the end of the year or whatever,
mhm,
very upfront about everything.
mhm,
You don't get, when you work in the media and you hear coaches and GMs and
mhm,
players, you can get very used to just hearing, the coach speak or the
mhm.
cliches. I really feel like Rob Blake. I mean, he's more than happy to be transparent with you and tell you what's going on. And if there's something he has to keep close to the vest, he does that in a
Yeah,
kind of a respectful way. But he's a real straight shooter, and he's very open and honest. And I think that's not just great for media people, it's great for fans, right?
yeah.
It's great for fans to hear exactly what he's thinking, what he wants to do, what his plan is, and to see him follow through on it. So if there's any fans out there that are complaining about this right now, I think you're looking really hard at something to be disappointed at, because right now I think it's a great move all the way around, and I'm just so excited about this edition, and just helping the team start the season off on a great note.
Love it. Well, I'm excited. I think that this was it was a gift from Rob Blake to us to put a show together today by delivering us Kevin Fiala. So that was pretty exciting. I'm going to be talking with Seth again from Locked On Wild. So a future episode of the show this week, we're going to have a little bit with him to kind of break down the deal from the Wild's perspective as well. So keep an eye out or an ear out for that. But that'll do it for today for a special late afternoon edition of Locked On Kings. Eddie, a pleasure as always to get to chat with you and hear your thoughts on this deal. For folks who want to find you in the meantime, where can they find you and your work?
Well, if you like listening to sports talk radio, I'm on the Fox Sports Radio Network locally in Los Angeles, AM 570, LA Sports overnights, part of the Ben Maller show and the morning show as well. So you can also follow me on Twitter at Eddie on Fox. Always love to hear from Kings fans and to interact with you guys as well.
All right. And you, of course, can find me on Twitter at Right Said Sarah. The show's on Twitter at Locked On LA Kings, where we're, following along with all the latest, greatest Kings news, including my very untimely post sharing the fact that Brock Faber had just been made captain of his team. And then minutes later, the Kings traded him. So what can you do? It's the internet. That is it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you're subscribed to the show so you never miss an episode. And we'll be back all week, next week, whatever, with more Kings news as we wait to see what else Rob Blake does. Until next time, this has been Locked On Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.